How do you feel about a 98 positive risk, right?
Mm.
So this is what I mean. So when you're talking about, what would I obsess? Okay, well, what would you obsess about? And what risks are we talking about? So the risk is, maybe 50-50 that you inherit it, but then it's only a 30% chance that it would show up. And then it would only show up at this point in your life. So we can break that down and we can help people adjust to that.
Mm.
Then you've got the other people, I don't want to know. I don't want to have a test. I just want to bury my head in the sand. I'm just going to live my life and then I'll worry about it when it comes to me. I'll live my best life. Yeah. So then we have that same conversation, right? What does live your best life mean? Why would having a test stop you from living your best life? How could your life be better if you actually knew, and as you said, you lived your life in a way that you didn't invite other issues, or that you were the fittest you could be when these issues come along? So we can have that conversation. Maybe it's not the right time for the test now. Maybe, so as a genetic counsellor, it's not it's the most important bit is not the test and the scientific understanding. Yeah. It's how I help this person adjust to that information based on their thoughts, values, and beliefs, and how it makes them feel. I don't tell them to do anything. I don't say you must have a sickle cell test, you must have a termination, you must not have children, you must have adoption. I don't tell anybody any of those things. I give you all of the information so you make the decision that works for you in the situation that you're in. So I think those are the two things I wanted to say. What was the other thing I wanted to say? I said there was three.
Maybe it will come back to you.
It was your last question. I can't remember what it is now. It might come back.
Yeah, it probably would. Because to me, it sounds like your job overlaps with being a psychologist, a therapist, because someone could feel that, for instance, a classical example is, I would feel fat, and maybe it's a technical glitch, not technical glitch now, a genetic glitch that makes you have more body mass or something like that. But you think going to the gym and killing yourself over and over would help, but also knowing that that is a genetic condition would, in a way, dampen your motivation.
Help you manage that?
Well, it could help you manage it on the far positive side. Like you said, it's I think it's a flip. It's either it's half full or half empty. So you're either pessimistic or optimistic about it. It could be a 50% chance that you get this condition, and then you're all overly optimistic that, oh yeah, nothing's gonna happen.
I'm in the 50% that will be okay. Absolutely.
And then there are people that will just recline and go to the pessimistic side. Ooh, I've got 50% chance of dying from this. And so they will go to the gym every day because they feel, oh yeah, I have a 50% chance at being obese.
Sure.
Right. So for me, it's like, how do you then, is there a point where it goes out of your hands and you hand such a person over to a psychologist to undergo a proper therapy, or is it within your confines of your job to sort of lead them into believing that, oh, it's just a 50% chance? How about looking at the 50% chance that you would leave?
Okay, so there's two things, and I remember what your question was. The question was, is there a genetic test you should have so you know all of the things that you're at risk of? But I pretty quickly said, no, I don't think you should do that. And the reason that I don't think you should do that is, one, because you often then obsess about things that have very low percentages. And I don't know if that's helpful, but maybe it would be helpful for you. So I would say, if obsessing makes you feel better, then maybe that is the right thing for you to do. I just don't know if it is the right thing for most people to do. And then the other thing that we think about a lot in genetics is it's such a huge amount of information that we haven't completely categorized and understood most of it. So the advice we can give is quite limited sometimes. And also you might find things that you weren't looking for, you weren't prepared for in any way.
Yeah.
Right? So this is the purpose of genetic counselling, pre-testing. So there's different types of genetic counselling. You can have genetic counselling pre-testing, you can have genetic counselling post-testing, right? And then there are some conditions where you have lots of pre-test genetic counselling. So you have lots of sessions, like really serious conditions, kind of like Huntington's disease is one of the ones that I'll think about, is that I had a patient once and I saw him for a year before he had the test. So I saw him for about 4 or 5 appointments before he decided, okay, now's the time that I want to have the test. for all of those things that you said, you know, some people are half empty, some people are half full, some people are about to get married, some people are buying a house, some people are, so this idea that people are different is the bread and butter of what I do, because that's exactly what I'm trying to get to. What is the thing that will help you to adjust and help you to make decisions? The adjustment may happen in a genetic counselling interaction, which are about 45 minutes sessions. Normally 45 minutes to an hour is about the time that most genetic counsellors will see people. And we call it a psychotherapeutic intervention because there is evidence to show that having this burst of a genetic counselling session at the acute time when you need it can help people's adjustment long term. Okay? So that's evidence that we know what can be the impact of this short interaction with genetic counsellors. So when you said, we're a bit like psychologists and think we kind of are, right? So that's why we've got the two bits in our name, is that I have scientific knowledge, but also I know some counselling techniques, I know some counselling therapies, and I can give you an acute psychotherapeutic intervention. And that might be something that you dip in and out of over time, and that's all you need. Yeah? The other important part is that because I know this spectrum of support that people need, I know whether actually what you need is disability living allowance. I know whether what you need is social services. I know, I'm having this deep conversation with you so that I can say, do you know what I think would be really important for you right now is, have you thought about talking therapies? Have you thought about the psychological access that might help you deal with this bit? Because this bit doesn't feel like it's about the condition. This bit feels like it's about the abandonment of, your parent dying with that condition. And actually grief sounds like the thing that you're dealing with. Do you want to talk to somebody about grief? So I've had somebody describe genetic counsellors as like, we're like the puzzle bit in the middle, that we have complete hold of the fact that a genetic condition doesn't happen in isolation of your humanness. Like, you're a person and there are all sorts of things that are going to be needed to help you adjust. And some of it might be that you didn't know what a gene and a chromosome was. You didn't know that it wasn't because, you cheated on your husband. Do you know what like there are myths and all sorts of things that people hang on to, that just sitting down for 45 minutes and getting the right information is the only adjustment they need, and then they just can get on with their lives.
Absolutely.
But then there are people who need more, and a genetic counsellor might be the person that can help you find what more you need to continue with adjustment and making the right decisions for your life. I think that describes it better, maybe. I don't know if I'm being clear.
It is very clear to me right now, because you make a very valid point. People tend to want, in a bid to be in control, we want to allocate reasons to why certain predicaments are happening. So if I should be found with a genetic condition, for instance, I want to know exactly why that is happening. And the explanation that this could be a genetic glitch at birth that I had nothing to do with, there was little to nothing I could do to change it, doesn't always cut it for most people. They want to be able to say, it's because you had too many bananas every morning, and that is why you have this condition. Or it's because you have too many sodas or something. So they can easily do the blame game and say, this is the exact reason why I'm having this condition. And maybe a change of lifestyle in that direction or away from that direction could help their chances. So really, I think that therapeutic session for 5 minutes, getting people to understand that this is not because of one thing you did. It is not because you refused to pick up the trash somewhere someday. That's why you have this condition. It helps them have a better outlook and maybe a positive mindset towards what the condition is and their chances of survival against or winning or defeating that condition. So
it's already hard enough for most people to get their head around the fact that a genetic condition has happened, because there are thousands of them, but individually they are often really rare, right? So nobody is walking around thinking, I'm going to have a baby with Aicardi Goutier when there's only like 30 of them in the whole world. Like, no one. So most people are shocked, right? And as you said, they need to understand, and that understanding helps you feel like you are in control. And in the absence of a understanding that might come from a genetic counsellor, you will look for other things that are giving you that understanding so that you can feel that you're in control. So actually what we're always talking about is, what is the thing that will make you feel like you are in control of this chaos that has entered your life? And that's essentially what genetic counsellors are doing. We're holding you in this moment of shock and chaos and talking about what are the things that are going to help you feel in control of this. I can't take it away. I can't make a diagnosis go away. I can't bring your relative back. Like there are things that I cannot do. But there are things that we can do to make sure it's not any worse, and to help you access what it is that you need to cope. Like we all have the capacity for resilience and coping and all of those, but it's different for different people. Some people need psychological support, some people need family support, some people need medication, some people need exercise. Like what are the things? Some people just need information, right? I just need you to explain how this has happened. So that's essentially all I'm ever doing, really, is I'm trying to help you find the right thing for you. And of all the details that I know about genetics, like, you know, of the tests and the genes and the chromosomes, most genetic counsellors will tell you after a long time of working in the field, very few people end the session saying like, oh, it was because she gave me really good scientific information. Like that opens the conversation. But when we get down to it, as humans, that's not the thing that makes us feel better.
True.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, something that has worried me for a while now, a few years, is you see people who have autistic children and they probably do not have any history of autism in their family line. And it baffles me because I'm like, okay, how did this happen? So questions like that. And if you were to just tell me, oh, it's a genetic condition, that doesn't really cut it. But I think having a conversation that is more human and helps people to come to the fact that this is actually a genetic condition, and could it have been your fault? Right. Some people would think, oh, is it because I did something very stupid when I was younger, and that's what has been transferred to my children, and now one of them has autism. It can be very, very depressing, to be honest. I mean, I'm close to a few people that have this kind of worry. What could have caused this?
What they did.
And, and what could I have done differently to have changed the outcome? So, I really do appreciate your line of work. It is, I mean, again, I did not always know that was the genetic counseling career path, to be honest.
So I should probably talk about that, the reason that nobody knows.
Right? Maybe.
Because it's very important, right? So there are different reasons why nobody knows. One of the most common reasons that I tell people, because I meet people all the time and they're like, huh, a what? Do you counsel the genes?
Exactly.
Do you design the babies? Like, so we know that the reason that nobody knows is because, as I said, genetic conditions are rare, generally, and we are dealing with the most serious genetic conditions, most complicated ones, right? So that doesn't happen very often for most people. So most people don't know us because you're never going to need us. And that's a good thing, because that manages what you were talking about in the very beginning, which is like, should I be worried about every single thing in my gene? Probably not, because as complicated as we are as humans, for it to all go wrong, it's a miracle it mostly never does. So pregnancy is the most complicated set of way that we figured out to reproduce. And it shouldn't really work, but mostly it does. So reassuringly, most people don't know us because mostly we're fine when it comes to genetic conditions. So that's one reason. The other reason is that we're so specialist, there aren't many of us. So, and also we're a global profession, but we're not everywhere. And so when I spoke very early on about my issues and values and why my research is so very much tied to what I do and social justice, it's because I'm in this profession. I think it's fantastic. And I look around and I'm like, oh, there aren't that many African and Caribbean people coming to my clinics. But I'm born and raised in the UK, and I know there's loads of us. So where are we? And then I look at the people who do the job, and I'm like, oh, there are no other African or Caribbean people even doing this job. And I've been in this job for a number of years, and it's never happened. And then I go to South Africa, and they have this profession in South Africa. But as far as Africa was concerned, they were the only country at that time when I went, other than kind of Arabic African countries, that had this even as a profession. So that was the other reason, is that actually the countries we come from as African and Caribbean people don't have it as a profession. And that was the other reason that we kind of don't really know what it is. Things have changed a little bit since then. Tiny bit. So in terms of representation of African and Caribbean communities in genetic counselling in the UK, there are now a handful of us, and we kind of are working towards making the workforce at least look like the diversity that we see in the areas that we have our clinics. Like, that would be a nice aim. So there is that. There is a new genetic counselling course in Ghana, and so that is the first in that region of Africa, and they have the first cohort. So they literally, in just training like one cohort, doubled the amount of genetic counsellors on the continent because there were only kind of, I think, like 10 or so in South Africa, and then Ghana like did 8, and then suddenly you just had like so much more. And for comparison, my department in Manchester and London, I've worked Manchester, London and Johannesburg. My Manchester department was just under 30. My London department is just under 30 genetic counsellors. My department in South Africa, for the same size of Johannesburg, was 4.
Wow.
So when we look at global distribution of genetic counsellors, the countries with the most people and the most diverse genetically people and the biggest burden of disease have the least amount of genetic counsellors. So there's a huge inequality in that, I guess. So we're rare because genetic conditions are rare, and so you don't need us to do everything with everybody all the time. But also there's a huge discrepancy with countries having access to it and having the professionals to do the work. Some countries still don't even recognize it as a profession. So there's always that as well, that you might be from a country where it just doesn't exist. You just go directly to doctors and between labs, and there's no connecting psychosocial person in that pathway. So there is also that. So if you were in France, I don't think they have genetic counsellors at all, but they do the same genetic test. They just manage it all very differently.
Wow. Well, that explains it, because
so don't feel bad. No one ever knows. I've got friends who've known me for like a decade, and they still are just like, oh yeah, she speaks to pregnant women, and I'm like, well, not only, like sometimes I do, and they'll, like, I'll post something, and they're like, you do that as well? I'm like,
Wow. Okay. I think I have one crucial question for you now.
Sure, go ahead.
And that is why? Why do you do this? Why do you? What motivates you? What inspires you?
So I think, as I said, like when I look back at the path that I have taken, you could say that I planned it all. That I did biology, I did science communication, I did genetic counselling, and that's why I'm here as a genetic counsellor. I planned none of those steps really, much to the frustration because of my family, because that Caribbean and African families prize education very highly, and we recognise quite few professions in that as well. And so when you're doing things that people don't know about or don't quite make sense, I'm sure I made a lot of people nervous with this. I'm going to be a science journalist. I'm going to be just be a doctor. So
that's what we know.
So it looked like a plan. It wasn't a plan. What it was a dedication to what I felt was my skill set, my values, and my principles. I love science. I've always loved science. I walked around with in science encyclopedia when I was a kid, and I picked up anything, then I would look in that encyclopedia and figure out, what is the structure of glass? Or what is, and then I would tell somebody, and so from a very early age, it wasn't just the knowledge, it was the passing on of the knowledge that was the value. So I would learn, and then I would talk to my mum. I would draw on the cupboard doors and show her what I had just learned. So I think that value has continued, that knowledge doesn't, the importance of knowledge for me, or the importance of showing that you're knowledgeable, is what you do with it and how you share it. If you are unable to communicate this knowledge to anybody else, I don't see the purpose in it. And so I think that that's a huge part of what makes me love genetic counselling, that I am acquiring this knowledge to pass it on and to share it. We have a proverb or a saying in Jamaica that is each one teach one, which is like a principle that if you know, you pass it on, right? So I think that is really like a big passion and a drive. And also my mum is a Rastafarian. So we grew up in a family that very much spoke about oppression and freedom and knowledge and like all of these types of things. So the drive is the values. Like I'm sure if I had taken up catering, the values would have been the same. You know, I'd probably be like a baking teacher or something like, you know, the drive is the drive. So the drive is the love of science, but the passion of knowledge and sharing knowledge, and the passion of kind of justice, which comes from kind of, you know, they say everything comes from your childhood, isn't it? So, but I can see that now, looking back. I don't know if I knew that going all the way through, but it makes a nice story now.
Wow. Amazing. Because for me, it's also, so there's a lot of buzzword around translational science. How do we translate our research? How do we translate advancements? And I think your passion borders around being able to actually go beyond just acquiring knowledge or making cutting edge research and breakthroughs in innovation. It's about translating that and actually affecting people in real time, affecting people in positive ways and making impact. I mean, that I share the same value, because I think knowledge in and of itself does not hold enough impact. It needs to be passed on. It needs to be translated to make meaningful impact in the lives of people. It's a very good drive, because like you said, again, you could be a baker and maybe be a baking counselor.
How do you feel about dough?
When you slap it together, how does that make you feel?
Make you feel? Talk to me.
Do not put all of your aggression into it. Wow, that sounds so amazing. But I'm very positive that such a career path does not come without its own challenges. Like you mentioned, the barrier to entry, people knowing about it is probably not as pronounced as you would like it to be. So I just want to dig into what kind of challenges have you sort of come across the course of your career, growing from biological science to science communications to genetic counseling. What kind of challenges did you face and how did you navigate it? This is specifically for people who are inspired by all of what you've just said and are probably thinking, oh, that sounds like me, that sounds like something I would like to do. So what kind of challenges did you face that they should anticipate? And then if you could just show how you navigated or are still navigating it.
Yeah, so I guess one of the biggest challenges is, I guess, financial. Like, it's not like, and I think that's a huge barrier for people that we often, I don't know, we don't really think about that. And so I think that along the whole way, when I look at my trajectory of kind of where I am in life and where I could have been, I know that kind of financial, family circumstances, like socioeconomic reasons have a huge impact on where you go and how fast you go in different spaces. I've been working since I was a teenager. So there was a lot of supplementing me to be in these spaces that maybe a lot of people don't always have access to. And I think as a family, our socioeconomic situation changed. And that also helps a lot of different opportunities and things as well. And I remember even like work experience that I had just aligned myself and had a very strong relationship with one of the senior teachers in the school. And it meant that even though I went to like a state school where people didn't often get really good work experience, that I got a very good work experience. because of that relationship, and he had worked with somebody who worked here and he facilitated that. So I guess my advice would be kind of like be quite, make networks, be open and intentional, be kind, and, you know, like always present yourself in a way that means people will remember you when opportunities are available to you. I think that's one of the ways that I have overcome challenges. So even doing the PhD, again, huge financial thinking to think about opportunities where that came about because of the work that I was already doing that spoke to my values and my passions, and being open and intentional, and people remembering this person I think would be right in this space. So that's one advice I would give. Have good networks and, you know, speak to people. Don't try and do things by yourself, because some of those opportunities might come in different ways to you. Being in the UK and the Black community being minoritized in the UK, particularly as you go into higher education and work, is another barrier for us. So we often are the only in rooms, on courses, for interviews, all of those things. And there are very micro things that you know are different for you because of that experience and because of those spaces, and that can be quite wearing on your mind and your emotions. There's a lot of second guessing about whether things are really happening or not happening. So again, that the networking, the talking, the finding similar people, finding mentors, those types of things I think are really important to get you through when you are picking a path that is unusual, or where you'll be alone a lot of the ways, finding other places where you're not alone. So I think that's enough.
I mean, that's enough. Maybe this is me asking this question as a follow-up to just stretch it a little bit more. It's similar to what you've just answered, but if you had a chance to do it all over again, what would you change? Or if you had a chance to speak to Sasha from 20 years back or 15 years back, I'm not guessing how old you are, but if you had a chance to speak to your younger self...
You can do 20. You can do a bit more than 20.
Okay. You get the point. If you had a chance to speak to a younger self, what do you know now that you wish they would know that would help their journey?
What do I know now? It's interesting, isn't it? Because as I said, when I look back, it all looks planned and it all makes sense. Like everything makes sense. Every trial, every tribulation, everything. I'm like, oh, see, you know that because of that. So I think I would just say to be kinder to myself, to just look after myself well, be kinder, be patient, and speak positivity into myself, like that I'm not doing it wrong. Because I think you do, as you are younger, spend a lot of time that you are behind, or that you're getting it wrong, you've made the wrong choice, like all of those things. I think I would just be reassuring to myself that sticking to principles is the right thing to do, because I think there were huge periods of doubt, huge periods where I wanted to give up, and ultimately I didn't. But there was a lot of anxiety and sadness around those times that just didn't need to happen, didn't change anything. It just made me feel bad in those moments. But actually I'm here, right? So, so I think that, be kinder to yourself. Don't worry about it.
True.
Keep going, but be kind,
It's very valid for you to have said all those things, because one thing that bothers people, even up until now, I know a lot of people are still uncertain what the future holds, and so we tend to worry too much, like I'm falling behind, I'm missing the target, I'm missing the point. But sometimes you just have to be gentle with yourself. The famous poem called Desiderata says, be gentle with yourself. There will always be people that are greater and lesser than you, so you can't always be in that consistent comparison or competition with others, and saying, they are well ahead of me. Well, you're well ahead of yourself yesterday.
Exactly.
So you just have to be kinder and gentler with yourself, but sticking to those core values, sticking to those passion that you have, the goals that you set, and all of that would really help. I mean, I wouldn't want to stretch our conversations beyond this, so I'll just draw it close to it. Okay. But if you have any last word you wanted to share with people who are now aspiring to become genetic counselors, or people who have now understood the role of genetic counselors, I mean, this is the time to share that.
Yeah. So what I would say is, to become a genetic counselor is different in different countries. We are a master's level profession. So wherever you decide to be a genetic counselor, the equivalency of that for all of us across the world is that we do a master's level course somewhere. So the US, Australia, the UK, obviously. There are various places in Europe. There is now the course in Ghana, as I said, course in South Africa. So research those places and what the way in is. Genetic counselors are a blend of science and caring. So if you say come from a science background, you might want to get some experience of working in caring professions. So volunteering, working on helplines, teaching assistant, like there might be working with people is a really important part. Yeah. And then if you've got the other side, you come from a caring background, then actually you need quite a high level of scientific understanding, or at least being able to understand scientific information. So then you can go and add those things on so that you would be eligible for that master's level course. So you can go and do short courses in genetics, and those types of things will be virtual and things to kind of get your kind of biology, life sciences skills up, so that you have a more a better looking kind of application. So those are the two things that you kind of need to think about. I would also say there are lots of jobs in the genetic ecosystem. So genetic counselor is just one of those roles. And there are all sorts of other roles that you can do in genetics. So be very clear that actually what you're talking about is a genetic counselor and not a geneticist or a genetic researcher, or there are all sorts of roles. So really kind of do your research. If it's genetics that interests you, there are all different things. You might never want to meet people at all. You might want to just work on a computer. Like, there are all different ways to work in genetics. So Your Genome is a website that Sanger have, and if you go on Your Genome, it has a number of different job profiles. My profile is there that talks about my path, but there are other people who work in genetics whose profiles are there, and that might be a good resource for people to think about what they want to do.
Wow, that sounds very intriguing, and I probably would add that. I should add that to the description of this podcast, so that whoever is interested will just go to.
They can just go and look it up.
Yeah. And maybe recommendations for the courses that they can take, short courses. Just to improve their application strength for master level courses as well. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Thank you so very much, Sasha.
No problem.
This has been such an enlightening conversation, because again, I never knew about genetic counseling.
And now you never forget.
Now I never forget. I think I am rest assured knowing that there is that hand-holding, even if you discover some unsettling information about your genetic condition in the future. So once that has been meted out to say, oh, you have this underlying genetic condition, you do know that there's a genetic counselor that could walk you through that process and help you come to the practicalities of living with yourself and being comfortable in your own skin. So that's to me is the main thing I'm picking out of this conversation, and it is really helpful, immensely helpful. And I would like to thank you so much for that. And thank you to all of our listeners. If you're watching from YouTube or listening from any of our audio podcast platform, thank you so much for sticking around and hearing all of what Sasha had to say. And I'm sure if you have any question, would they be able to reach out to you on LinkedIn or something?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, so absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you've got questions, you can put them in the chat of wherever you're listening to this or watching this from, or you could just shoot her a message on LinkedIn. Just connect with her, and I'm very sure she would be happy and more than able to respond to you. Maybe give you a counseling session. Yeah, but really, thank you so very much. Until next time, guys, keep learning, keep growing, and keep leading. Cheers.